At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. Today, we're talking to Dr. Kate Mason. She is a communications coach, a world champion debater, the mom of two boys, 10 and 7, and the author of a new book, which we'll be discussing today, Powerfully Likable, A Woman's Guide to Effective Communication. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was so lit up reading this book. This is a topic I'm thinking about so much. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we've had discussions about it on the podcast, balancing this idea of niceness and strength and being the right kind of woman versus being the kind of woman you want to be. There's so much wrapped up in having a teenage daughter, and you start to examine these things for yourself as you start to try to model and parent them for your child. You talk about starting to explore this first in your debate career. So tell us a little bit about how you came to this topic.
Yeah, I think teenage me was the first who started thinking about this as well. I started debate when I was 10. I would turn bright red and I would physically shake. I'd be so nervous, but something kept drawing me back and back to this space where I felt like, in hindsight, I realized it was a place that I could have the stage. You know, you had the floor for a number of minutes that were all yours, and probably a place where I could get out all of that, like, I told you so energy that I think I had as a young girl, right? You have sort of permission to do that. So that was the beginning of me thinking about that. And certainly in Australia, where I grew up, debate is a very male-dominated, or it was at the time, a very male-dominated place. So I was constantly in all-male teams. I was often the only girl or the only young woman in these teams. And I learned really quickly the difference or the delta between what I was doing and what they were doing and how I had to be a little different. And that was a pretty early awakening to those sorts of things that you're talking about.
I did high school speech, speech and debate. I was on the speech side. And I was just telling my own teenage daughter about this, that in my career, I always came in second. I always, in my event, lost to a boy. It wasn't always the same boy, but I always lost to a boy. And she's like, why do you think that was? And I was very accepting of it at the time. But as I was explaining it to her, I realized that, yes, even as a high school girl, I was very aware of having to look powerful and likable at the same time and getting that balance exactly right, whereas maybe the boy could just be powerful and therefore he was going to get the trophy. So I've been thinking about these ideas for a long time myself. I think most girls do.
Yeah.
And I think also the idea of neutrality, which you get at, that there is no true, what does neutral look like is very hard to define. And the opening page has a quote from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and it reads, "One of the criticisms I've faced over the years is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough. And maybe somehow because I'm empathetic, it means I'm weak. I totally rebel against that. I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong." And this is a lot of what you are exploring in the book, this line between being compassionate or nice and being capable, able, and strong. And you talk about it as a binary in the book, or that it's really maybe not such a binary. So talk a little bit about these two sides of the binary.
Yeah, I think for many of us, maybe our teenage selves, Amy, or women listening, we sometimes feel like there are just only two options for leadership, right? And by leadership, I mean at work, but also just showing up, at the PTA meeting or anywhere you might have to sort of stand up and advocate. We think those two options are, one, powerful, right? It's the Miranda Priestley, high authority, no friends.
Right, hated.
That's all.
Right, hated,
yes.
yeah. Or it's the likable, porous boundaries, yes to everything, no worries if not, lots of friends, no authority. And we sometimes, the more and more in my own coaching practice, I see people say that, well, these must be the two options. These are the two ends of this binary. And I've got to choose one. It's incumbent on me. I can only choose one. And once I've made that choice, that's it. I have to live with it forever. And I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I feel like it's very, very resonant with the people I work with. And so I wanted to, in the book, really push against that and say, for one, that construct doesn't actually exist. No one has a gun to our head about picking one of those two doors. But two, we're actually our best when we can pull together often dissonant or contrasting modes of leadership. And I loved that quote from Jacinda Ardern that you read, Margaret, because it shows that there's no reason why we couldn't bring a lot of, say, traditionally feminine coded attributes like communality or empathy or compassion or all sorts of things like that together with things like respect, power, and authority. And in fact, when we do that, we get a much more generative, interesting mode of being than if we had just picked one of those two doors.
I don't feel like this is something that men have to spend a lot of time thinking about, or maybe they don't feel that they have to think about, that you have to make sure there's enough likable in the powerful. And I think I know the answer, but why do you think this is something that women of all ages feel like they have to titrate exactly right and men just go to work?
I wish I had a great answer to that. The answer, I suppose, in my own coaching practice is I actually do see some men more now having to think about that. I have what I think of as very nice men who are like, I need to be in authority, but I don't want to mansplain to anyone. Or I want to be empathetic, but I don't want to be creepy. They are noticing some of these tightropes as well. So I do think some of them, the self-aware ones, are definitely thinking through those balances. But I fully agree with you that women have at least, if not more tightropes to walk, we're more aware of them. We're more keenly aware of them. I suspect the reason is, and this is from my own anecdotal experiences, that women are relatively still new to the workforce. And so the only model we have, I think about as, and I talk about a little bit in the book, is we think about what does authority look like in an American home? And a lot of it, I believe, comes from the American newsreader. Think like 1950s, this authoritative man who at the end of the day, you'd sit down and you'd all turn on the television and this nice older gentleman would tell us what was true and what was happening. And this is how we learned, oh, okay, this must be true. This is what's happening. You know, Walter Cronkite said it or whoever it is, right? And that newsreader mode, I think, has subconsciously sort of affected who we listen to and who we believe in. He was always a little wrinkled. He had a slow, soft, composing way of being. And in some ways, I think we've really taken that to heart in the way of who we accept authority from and who we sort of place trust or respect in. And sometimes for a woman to inhabit that space, it can be just a little more difficult. And I think that will change in time. I think, again, women are relatively new to a modern workplace, and that I'm hopeful about that over time.
I think there is something, and I like the way you talk about it in the book, about the binary and the neutrality. Like a suit is what a presidential candidate wears in the United States, right? But with a woman, there is no neutral suit. Like 10 guys in a suit, you're not thinking at all about what they're wearing. But any woman there, if you put on a suit, like you're doing a weird bit, or if you wear the bow with the weird suit from the 80s, you look dated. But if you dress too feminine, you use this phrase, and I wanted to read it because it really jumped out to me. The shrinking, reductive binary of powerful versus likable is a disaster. And I think that I just see so much that the binary and the neutrality is all out of whack, I think, in trying to figure out how to move in the world as a woman who wants to have power and agency.
Yeah, it's really complicated. And you're right. Like, if I wear a pussy bow blouse versus a different blouse, is that going to send a message? Like, there's layers and layers on this that is exhausting. And so I really wanted to, in the book, say, I see you. I know it's exhausting, but here are some practical ways to think about it. Like, here are some ways and exercises to look at yourself, to think about where I'm proud of how I'm showing up and where I think it's serving me. And then maybe there are other ways that aren't serving you. And you might want to experiment with those and play around with them such that you find a place that feels good.
I had never thought about that fashion thing. There's a popular podcast in the US called Pantsuit Politics, Two Women. And I was listening to an interview with them and how they chose the name. And it was because Hillary Clinton was running for president at the time. And they, in conversation, were like, yeah, why is it called a pantsuit when she wears it? It's just a suit. Like, why do we have to have a special name for pantsuit for her fashion choice? And it's exactly what we're saying, that there is no neutral, right? If she's wearing a suit, and all of a sudden it's a pantsuit, and it's dated, or it's weird, or it's flattering, or it's not. And there are so many more things we have to think about. So I guess it's about knowing, like, yeah, it is. Is it in our head that this tightrope is there? Or is it that, no, it's there, but here's what you worry about and here's what you set aside?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have a lot of people say to me, but Kate, don't you just want to burn this whole thing down and start again, right? Or don't you want it? This is so frustrating and this is so broken. I'm like, yeah, that's one option, right? My take is a little more realistic, which is like, this is what we have. Let's work within it and work out how to feel better about it. And so calling it out, I believe, is relieving. Oftentimes when I'm doing a workshop with women, one of the signals I know when I'm getting through to people is I see shoulders come down out of relief. You know, there's this like, oh, yes, she's saying it. It's happening. It's there. I'm not imagining it. Because sometimes we don't have these open conversations about what it means to kind of carry all of that. So my, I guess, philosophy is always like, yeah, let's name it. Let's call it out. And then follow up with what can be useful.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because in my other life, I am a speech and presentation teacher. So I do a ton of exercises. And one of the exercises we always do is called the expert. And it's like learning to speak as an expert. It's an improvisational exercise. But one of the first things I like to do in that exercise is say, what does an expert look like? Who is an expert? And often people, to use your example, say like an older white man in a suit carrying a briefcase. Maybe he has glasses. Like there's a very specific. So you talk in the book about voice, appearance, controlling our faces. So let's start there with the physical manifestations and how power manifests in our communication.
Yeah. I was going to add a lab coat is often something people say to me too. Like lab coat's a great one. You know, this toothbrush ads with a lab coated dentist is always like, oh, he must
4
know
out of 5 dentists agree.
It's a real dentist.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, authority, similarly, yeah, I think that's a really good point that there's so much that we glean from people. So I think about expertise in a couple different ways. One is when I ask women, who is an expert or are you an expert? They'll usually say, oh, no, I'm definitely not an expert. And I say, when will you be an expert? And they're like, well, in about 5 years, 10 years. Like, and I'm like, oh, so it's age. So when you're 50, you'll be an expert. And then they're like, oh, well, I don't know. It's always in the future and it's always contingent. Like it's never right now. And I think that's so fascinating because the people I work with are really high achieving people whose titles you would see on LinkedIn or, you know, in the news and think, oh, of course they're the expert. They're the SVP of this or the head of that. And yet even they are still kind of a bit uncomfortable with this word. So expert is a really interesting word to me. We often undersell by accident or subconsciously or undermine our own expertise in a lot of different ways. And so part of the book is looking at, are there ways that you might be subtly undermining yourself or your expertise? One of them is a really classic, I'm not an expert, but, or I'm sure you've already thought of this, but. We do these sort of caveats at the beginning, right? And which straight away makes the other person think whatever we're going to follow up with mustn't be that important or our voice mustn't be listened to. I'm not an expert, but. And very often the people saying these things actually are. They do have a lot of subject matter expertise. So that's one of the things I look at is like, maybe there are ways you might be undermining. And if so, and if you're not happy with what that effect is, here are some ways you might want to think about changing those.
We're talking to Kate Mason about her new book, Powerfully Likeable, A Woman's Guide to Effective Communication. And we'll be right back. Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. So Amy has a book called Happy to Help, and there were a lot of times where I was like, oh yeah, I can see some parallels here. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the high price of being agreeable, because I think that I was recently talking to Jyoti Chand, who has a book called Fitting Indian. And her idea was, or she was talking about in the book, that you can be a good Indian wife, you can be a good Indian daughter, you can be a good Indian mother, but the good and Indian never come off. There's only certain roles you can play. So I liked this phrase a lot, the high price of being agreeable.
I think many of us have encoded likability or being liked with being agreeable. We've put those two things together so that if you talk about someone being likable, the implication is like, oh yeah, she'll fit you in. She'll make it happen. She'll say yes. And I kind of want to decouple those two things. I want to say that likable definitionally should really mean I like being around that person. I like being in their orbit. I see their name on my calendar or they ring my phone and I'm happy. I think that's a good thing. That's likability. Likability being coupled with agreeableness kind of makes it feel like I'll only be likable if I say yes, or I'll only be likable, like it's contingent on me giving something in exchange. And I really fundamentally don't believe it should be, or that we don't need to couple those things together. So I think we all have felt that high price of agreeability. The sure, I'll do it, or no worries, or I'll bring the meal, or I'll organize the thing, or whether it's, extra work, or whether it's taking something on, or even in a work context saying, sure, I'll take on that thankless extra task that no one else wants to and I'll never get recognized for. We sort of assume that that will mean we are likable. And actually, it doesn't often mean that at all. It often means that we end up being taken for granted or doing invisible labor that nobody sees or gives us credit for, and often breeds, I think, a fair amount of reasonable resentment in us, right? I did all these things and no one ever said thank you or pointed it out or acknowledged it.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we're thinking about agreeability as one thing and likability as a difference. And there's lots of different ways to be likable.
It seems to me, Kate, that that's something else that women are expected to do. Women are expected to not mind taking on this one more thing or fitting in this, that being agreeable and looking out for the needs of the group is something that is valued and expected of women more than of men. And that then when you do take on maybe more than you should have because you were trying to be likable because you thought that's what you needed to get ahead. In other words, conflating likable and as agreeable as you're saying, then it's sold back to you as an insufficiency in yourself, that you were so weak-willed, right? As opposed to like, I was really trying to seem responsible and capable.
Right. And nobody wanted those cookies you made anyway. So, you know.
Right. And that seems to me that that's another thing that a typical man in a typical workplace wouldn't have to tease out in quite the way that women do. But we do.
Yes, and I think there's a great example of that because I can feel the implicit question here is like, but hang on, that's true. I'm sure that's true. I know I have to be these things, right? And I want to say, imagine you're managing someone or you're working alongside someone for like a school fair or some project. And someone says, sure, I'll have everything done by Friday. And come Friday, and you think, oh, how likable, how agreeable, right? They've got it all done by Friday. Come Friday, they don't have it done because they said they would take it all on and they just didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity to get it done. To me, as a manager or as a colleague or as a friend, that is supremely unlikable behavior. I would have loved for you to tell me you were struggling so we could get it done. Now we're in the position it's Friday. We don't have what we need. That's frustrating for everybody else, right? So sometimes agreeability doesn't necessarily help you in the long term. A boss is going to be kind of annoyed to not have that done by Friday if you promised it would be. So thinking about it would be much more, quote, likable from that boss or colleague's perspective if you said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to get all that done by Friday. Here's what I'm going to prioritize. These are the 3 things I'm definitely going to have done. The 4th one, I'm going to need some help or I'm going to need us to get someone else to work on this with us. And then I can guarantee everything will be done. That's a much more difficult thing to do, but frankly, a longer term, sustainable, better thing to do for that relationship.
Right. Not just better for how you're perceived, but actually better for you, your own work-life balance and for outcomes.
Yeah. And better for the project, right? Everything would be done by Friday. So I always try and give those examples to say it's not always a likability thing to say, sure, it's all be perfect. Because if it doesn't work out, there's always that frisson or that friction between what you said you'd promise and then what gets delivered. And over time, that can be really damaging at work, particularly.
Let's talk a little bit about imposing syndrome as opposed to imposter syndrome.
Yes, my favorite.
I like this concept.
So we all know, I think, imposter syndrome, right? The feeling that they're all going to find me out. And I have many thoughts about that one. What I wanted to talk about in the book was the idea, what I call imposing syndrome, which is when we are so aware of our own likability. We're thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me and I must be this agreeable and nice person, that we are afraid to make any ask or any ask that we might have, we feel like it would impose or be an imposition on somebody else. So think about when you say, it'll just take 2 seconds. That's, I'm afraid to ask for time. I don't believe I am important. I don't believe my work is important. If we over-apologize for something that doesn't need an apology, if we do lots of those caveats, I'm not an expert, but I couldn't possibly, but the no worries if not. We're so used to doing these types of diminishments or minimizations to our asks that it becomes, I think, a pattern wherein we think that's the only way that we could ask, and there's this discomfort in asking. And I really want to push and say, if your work is important and you are important, which I believe both things to be true, it should be okay to make an ask and say, Amy, can I put in 30 minutes for us to talk through this next week? Or, Margaret, I really wanted to talk to you about our resourcing for next quarter. These are great asks. These are important asks. And by giving them space and time, we actually optically or verbally help show the other person that they're important. if I tell you it'll just take 2 seconds, you're probably not going to think I'm going to tell you something that revelatory, right? Like 30 seconds, no big epiphany ever happened in 30 seconds.
Right. And then it's a 20-minute meeting and then they're mad at you that you said it would take 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're not listening. They're not primed to hear something interesting. They're primed to hear a quick update or can you move the meeting from 10 to 11? So for sure, there are things that will take 2 seconds, and by all means, use that when it's appropriate. But give yourself the space and the time. That's what I really want to push on with imposing syndrome, that it's not something we need to feel burdened by. We are valuable and our ask is valuable. And interestingly, I think in a work context, when you start positing that my work is valuable and I am valuable, you are unsurprisingly seen as such. Someone takes it seriously. Oh, okay, she wants to talk about resourcing. Let's really sit down and give that some time. So suddenly the ask is important and also she is important. It's a very different kind of coding than, oh, someone's irritating and stopping by my desk and getting me out of my flow again.
I think that also, just as I'm raising a daughter, as I'm being a mom and a wife and staying at home and doing a lot of different jobs, I think that the idea of taking your own importance at work, I feel like it feels very understandable. Like, okay, at work, I need to be in this specific role. But I think in thinking a lot about these issues, that to say, and this is something I've come to, I think, partly from doing the podcast, I feel so much more comfortable saying to my spouse, we need to sit down and have an hour where we talk about budget. I feel like things are out of control. Like, just the way I run the house is important. The way we spend our money as a family is important. And I like that you shine the lens on, because I think we've all heard the rules of don't say you're sorry too much, don't apologize for existing. But I think putting the lens back on like your needs are important in any organization, whether it's a workplace where you're trying to function and possibly stand out, or whether it's at home where often I'm sublimating my needs to my kids. I feel like one of the things I've gotten a lot better on by thinking and talking about parenting is saying, everybody stop. It's my night. I have a class that I have to teach tomorrow. I need to prep for it. Someone else needs to make dinner, but just accepting the importance of yourself is the first step.
Yes. And that it might inconvenience someone. Like you not being home to cook dinner, that may be annoying.
And that's not a deal breaker.
Right. And you're going to do it anyway. It's very small. I noticed it on myself. Like recently I asked my husband to take our boys to soccer on a Saturday morning. Normally we both take one son each to different places. And I was so exhausted. I'd had a huge week. And I realized I had really been working myself up to ask. Like it was a big ask. But I said, can you do both of the soccer games? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I said, oh, thank you. I just need that hour to like regroup and I'll go for a walk. I'll feel a lot better. I'll be ready for the whole weekend. And he's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. But I had really sort of twisted myself into knots about even asking. And it's not because he's an unreasonable person. It's the very opposite.
Right.
But we're so used to taking that on. So making those asks is not an imposition. It's often welcomed.
If your identity is to always be the solution, then whenever you bring a problem, you feel like I'm out of lane.
Yes.
I'm doing something wrong. So much of it is just looking at that identity.
And think about, women in a work context were usually secretaries, right? If we go back to the 50s, they were the solver of problems. I will fix the schedule. I will order lunch. I will make sure everything flows smoothly. Even AI assistants, the default voice today is a woman. So we're very used to responding and fixing, but we're not so used to asking for space and time or resources or whatever it is ourselves. So it's not surprising because all of culture has kind of posited it that way, but it's really important for us to sort of try to reverse it little by little. So even if it's just 1%, even if it's just in your household asking for that one thing you need this week, I think that's a really revelatory thing. And you might realize that people around you are like delighted to help. Like my husband was like, sure, I'm happy to do the soccer run. It's not often as gnarly as we make it out to be in our minds.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the phrase non-goals.
So I'm obsessed with this idea. I talk in the book about when I went to work at Google, someone said, oh yeah, for this project, that's a non-goal. And I kind of thought they were joking. Like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, you have a list of non-goals. And actually in product management, when you're launching a tech product, there are literally a list of goals. Like these are the things we will do. And there's an explicit non-goal list. these things we know about, but they are out of scope for this product launch. We are deliberately not doing them.
What would be an example of that?
So maybe you've got in a product context, you may say we're going to launch a product that has the ability for people to change the calendar, but we're not going to have the ability to add multiple people to a calendar event. That's going to come later. So you think about product launches in pieces, and the first version will have some pieces and the second version will add more, et cetera, et cetera. I love this idea in life to overtly and explicitly name the things we are not going to do. So you may say, I am not going to wash the car this weekend. It is a non-goal. We have too many things on. There are lots of other competing priorities. It is dirty. It needs to be washed. I acknowledge that. But this is a non-goal. And it can be very liberating because I think oftentimes we sublimate or we take on all of these invisible goals to other people, and then we feel really bad about them. I haven't folded the laundry. I haven't done all of these things. My I haven't list is usually very long, and I'm sure yours is too. Calling it a non-goal for this weekend and saying, this is the parameters I'm going to set out. It is not happening right now. It will happen. There'll be a V3 or a V4 of me that will do it. But right now, calling it out that way gives us a little bit of license to just put it down for a moment. And I think that's a very liberating thing to think about in life, as it is if the biggest companies in the world are doing this. I think we can learn something from it.
I love that idea. We're talking to Kate Mason about her new book, Powerfully Likeable. We'll be right back. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women, tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
So you have an idea in the book, Kill Your Confidence. Describe that to us.
So confidence is one of those things a lot of us feel I need to work on my confidence, or even worse, I've been told I need to work on my confidence, right? Someone has said that. You might be familiar with it. You might have also heard I need to develop my executive presence, which I think is a ridiculous phrase because who really knows what that means, right? Like, do I have to dress differently or talk differently?
I think with kids, it often manifests as self-esteem. We need to get more. Yes. We all need more self-esteem, as if it's a box that you can open and find.
Absolutely, yes. And I actually think when you tell somebody, a child or an adult, to be more confident, it's the last thing they end up feeling. It's like telling someone you just got to be healthier. It sounds good in theory, but there's lots of different ways we get there, and it's going to look quite different for all of us. So one of the things I think about when I think about confidence is if I'm so worried about being confident, I lose myself. I lose the connection with other people in that interaction. And I'm sitting in that mental space judging, did that sound confident? How do I say that more confidently? Did they think I'm confident? We have all of these other mental tabs opening instead of actually being in the moment. So if you have been told to be confident or to find self-esteem, don't give that feedback or don't think about it in those terms. Think about, for example, how can I be of service in this relationship? How can I be helpful in this meeting? How can I be useful right now? How can I connect and really listen with this person? These are the things that are going to keep you in that interaction, keep your own ability to help and to listen and to respond really at your best. And actually, it gets you out of your own head. So one of the things that I think is confidence keeps you in your head, and thinking through like connection actually puts you back in the moment much more effectively. And actually, ironically, then you probably will look confident because you've listened, you've answered, you've met the request, you're acting. So it's more about sort of inhabiting that verb rather than thinking about it as this thing that's out of reach.
What about taking the other side of this? What about the woman who is told that she's being too assertive? She's being strident or heaven forbid shrill or whatever. I mean, I was in I served on a nonprofit board where the board president, male, took me to task for being too forceful in meetings, like asking too many tough questions. And I love the board was my answer. But I could just leave, right? It was a volunteer position. But how do you work with women who are being told they're being too powerful in a situation that they need to make work in some way? What's the right way through that situation?
Yeah. So I have a lot of clients who come to me on either end of these binaries, right?
Yeah.
I need to step into my power, or I've been told I'm a lot and I don't know how. I mean, you're right. We have a whole lot of vocabulary specifically reserved for women, like shrill, nagging, whining. These we never talk about men in those terms. So it's kind of a fascinating rabbit hole to fall down. One of the ways in which I think about women like that, and I am that woman, so I think I have a sense of it, is one, think about which battles you need to fight in that moment. Do you need to fight all of them at once? Because sometimes that's not going to work just because people cannot take on all of the many arguments. So is it that this is the most important one and I'm going to fight this one, and then tomorrow I'm going to fight the next one? So sort of chunking out what needs to be done and when can be a useful thing. It's not to say that any of your arguments were wrong. I'm sure they were all right, and I'm sure all the hard questions you asked were correct.
But maybe some are non-goals, right? To use that idea.
They don't have to be all done today.
Right.
So that can be one way of thinking about it. The other way to think about it is I have this wonderful client who she's Austrian, but she works in the US. And she's like, I'm just naturally kind of blunt. That's who I am. I'm not sure if this is true to all Austrians, by the way. It just so happens that this is her experience. And she's like, I'm told I'm not warm, I'm not approachable, I'm very transactional, I'm very blunt. And when I talk with her, first I found her completely endearing and brilliant. But I saw what she meant. She does call it out. And I said, okay, I want you to call that out in your meetings. So say, look, I'm Austrian. I'm going to tell you how it is. I'm going to be really forthright here. I don't mean any offense. I'm just someone who really likes to be efficient and get things done. So here's how it's going to be. And she started realizing that when she would kind of just say that, people were so like, oh, it gave her license to continue to be who she is. But it gave everybody else a bit of a bridge to understanding how and why she was that way. So sometimes calling these things out can be really helpful. You can just say, hey, I'm someone who's going to come at this with like a lot of tough questions. That's how my brain works. That's how I like to approach things. I'm fully in support of the board, or I love the direction here, but here's some things I've been really ruminating on and I want to put them forward. Suddenly, we kind of get a little bit of a signpost for how to take it. And it sounds sort of a strange thing, but it's a very disarming strategy that helps other people go, oh, right, she's aware of it. She doesn't mean harm. And this is just kind of, quote, how she works. I find that to be a very, very simple way of moving forward. I used to do the same strategy, by the way. I lived and worked in the Bay Area for 5 years. And I would often find myself being a little bit more blunt than my very polite Californian colleagues. And I would come to say, look, I'm Australian. This is the way I would see it. And everyone would kind of laugh and be like, oh, well, she's Australian. But it gave me license to continue to do the things I needed to do or ask those tough questions as well.
The book has as we said, lots of examples of different women, lots of different kind of categories of communication, but it also has a lot of exercises and tips. So I'm going to give an example of one. You say, take an inventory of your last week. What were your moments in which you felt like your power was high, like you were unstoppable, free, and in control? Conversely, what were the moments in which you felt stymied or frustrated by yourself or external conditions? So talk a little bit about the purpose of this exercise and maybe some of your other favorite exercises that are in the book.
Yeah. So part of, I think, being a woman and talking in the world is that there's already so many prescriptions and rules that we've talked about that feel like we're, surviving amongst. And I didn't want to write a book, and I don't philosophically believe that like, do these 3 things and everything will be great. It's not a listicle. It's not simple like that.
Right.
But what I really believe in is, where are you currently sparking? Where currently are you feeling in your power? And like, you come out of an interaction and think, yeah, I crushed that. That worked exactly how I wanted it to. Find and isolate those moments. So this is that exercise. And then let's find the moments where you're feeling a little less than, where you're like, oof, that didn't go the way I really hoped it would, or I didn't feel like I showed my best self in those moments. And what the book seeks to do is say, we're going to try and amplify those moments where you are already feeling great. And here's some ways you might want to mitigate or help out those parts of you that might be feeling a little frustrated or smaller. And I think it's a really interesting exercise because our answers are going to be super different person to person. I have people when I run workshops who say, I feel really alive when I'm on stage and in front of people. And in the same group, I have someone else being like, I feel terrified when I'm on stage and in front of people, right? That's my nightmare. So really leaning into where we're already getting that energy from can be a really helpful, lovely way to think about it. I don't know if I have a favorite exercise in the book. That's like asking my favorite children question.
Yeah, favorite child.
But I do posit that the book is less a prescription, like go do these 7 things, and more an invitation. If these things have not been serving you, go have a think about what you might want to try, roll around in it, try it on, see if it fits, and then come to it with a sense of like, oh yeah, I like that, or that's helping me. That would be my dream, I suppose.
And I like this central idea of the book that power is a verb. That really resonated with me. It's something you practice, you are active in. It's not something that anyone hands you or takes away from you.
100%. Yes, it really has to be. And that's when we know we're living that verb, we feel it. It's really, you get that zappiness in your fingertips. You know it's happening. And when you know it's not happening, you feel it just as keenly. You come away from an interaction feeling small or diminished. You're like, oof, that didn't go the way I wanted it to, and I didn't quite feel it.
Do you think there's something we can teach our children, our high school debaters that we're raising now about what it means to be powerful and likable? Are they learning a new way naturally, or are there things that we can teach them as parents?
It's a great question. I do think that I oftentimes find myself talking with my 10-year-old and he's like, yeah, Mom, that's obvious. And I'll think, oh, wow, like this is great. You're much more advanced than I was at your age. He says it in a very endearing way. I do think kids are different and growing better. I think one of the best things we can do is help just by role modeling. Part of this is that we didn't see female newsreaders in the 50s. We didn't see female CEOs as we were growing up, or our parents in generation. So part of it is just being able to help them by showing them, this is me holding a boundary. This is me saying no. This is me being warm and amenable, but also thinking about my own level of burnout and capacity. All of these things I think are really important to be able to demonstrate, like, I can't be class parent, or I can't be volunteering at the soccer thing this Saturday, whatever it is. I think it's really important to show that we are finite and our capacity is limited, as distinct from being like always there and always saying yes, because that's actually a much more realistic picture to paint. So that's how I see my responsibility to my children. And hopefully I think that that's helping them understand that there are times when it's perfectly okay to say that's not going to be possible for me. That is a non-goal.
Non-goal.
I love that. Non-goal. We've been talking to Kate Mason. Her new book is called Powerfully Likeable, A Woman's Guide to Effective Communication. The book is out now, and we will put the link to buy it in the show notes. But Kate, tell our listeners where else they can find you and your work.
Thank you so much. My website is katemason.co, and that's a great place to come find me. And you can sign up to my newsletter there and read a little bit more about me and the book.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Kate, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.